I'm going to show you how to turn this into this with JavaScript and an amazing platform called Cloudinary. What's up, everyone, and welcome to the channel. My name is James Q Quick, and I do weekly videos on web development related technologies. And I like to automate anything I can using my programming skills. I highly recommend that you do it as well. And one of the challenges that I had recently is for my Compressed FM podcast, a weekly podcast about web development and web design, I wanted a way to generate social promo images for episodes with guests so that we can promo that on social media. But I didn't want to do it all myself. We have all the data, we just needed the actual image. And so I decided to use today's sponsor, which is Cloudinary, to automatically generate these images for us. It's really cool stuff. I love this. I get super excited. So we're going to talk about the magic that is Cloudinary to be able to customly and dynamically and whatever other words you can think of, generate these images that'll be really cool. So in this video, we're going to use Cloudinary to do that. We're going to use serverless functions or API endpoints inside of a Next.js application to generate those images. Now, at the end of this video, I'll show you a more in-depth view about how we are using that for the Compressed FM site and for episodes to generate them. And then we'll build the demo to start. At the end, we'll give you that deeper dive into the background of what we're actually doing. So let me show you really quickly what happens. So we are using Sanity for our podcast, and we store all of our information inside of here for episodes. So here's the recent one with Colby Fayok, who happens to work at Cloudinary. And notice there's no social cover URL. So when I actually publish this, it will actually generate this image. So this is just a URL inside of Cloudinary. Notice it's this really long URL. We'll talk about all those pieces in a minute. And it generates this image for us dynamically, programmatically, auto-magically, where it takes the title and it adds it on top of this part. It grabs the guest image and adds it here, and then it adds the guest name as well. Really, really cool stuff, I think. So let's go ahead and build out that functionality ourselves. So we're going to close this. Let's go to Next.js homepage, and we're going to create a new Next.js project. So we'll just copy this, and then I am inside VS Code, my favorite editor, and I'm going to run this command, which should have an N, for create next app. We'll run this. What is this project? This is Cloudinary Demo 2, I think, because I've done this before. This will go ahead and install all of our dependencies. Once this is done, we can open this up and actually start to write our code. All right, so that's done. I'm going to use code-r and open up the Cloudinary Demo -2. Again, you can obviously call that whatever you want. So we can go ahead and run this with npm run dev, and this will run the next application, and we can open this at localhost 3000. So that's where we're going to just kind of show that this is working. And then also show there is an API endpoint called hello already in here. So this is inside of the pages API directory. There's hello. And this is a basic API endpoint inside of Next.js. Pretty cool. So we're going to actually create our own. And so inside of API, we're going to create cover image.js. And then we can copy over the basic components of this. And we can just say, this is going to be from the cover image. And now we can test this endpoint in the browser by going to API /cover image just to make sure this works. So that actually returns correctly. Cool. So the next thing we want to do is actually grab the information or receive the information for the image that we want to generate. So the pieces that we're going to need is the first name of the guest, the last name of the guest, and the title of the stream. Now, eventually we'll do something where we're going to automatically upload the guest image. So we'll need a URL for their source image, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So we're going to need those things, and that's going to come from the body. So we're going to destructure these pieces from the body. So we'll grab first name, last name. We'll grab the guest image URL. We won't use that at first, but we will eventually. And then we'll grab the title, and all of that is going to come from the rec.body. And we can just log these things out. So I've got a shortcut CLG, and we'll log out first name, last name, and title for now. All right. Now, since we want to request or get stuff from the request body, we're going to actually need to send a post request. So I'm going to use RapidAPI as a tool that we can use inside of VS Code to test these endpoints. So I'm going to create a new request. we're going to send this request to localhost 3000. And then we're going to add on API and then cover image. And we're going to make this a post request. You can install this, by the way, if you search for RapidAPI client, you can search this in extensions and get it yourself. You could also use something like Postman or anything else that you're comfortable with. So then I'm going to send the request, and it says that the name is cover image. I think I may have... Oh, this is the actual response. So we didn't actually change this response. But down here in the log, you see undefined, undefined, undefined. So let's go to the body, and we're going to do JSON. And now we can start to fill this out. So I'm going to do first name is James. And then last name is Quick. And then the title is going to be James's really cool podcast episode. I don't know. It doesn't matter. So we send this, and we just want to make sure that these things are getting logged correctly. So we're able to grab these things inside of our API endpoint inside of Next.js. Now we can start to do the fun stuff where we are going to work with Cloudinary. So we will need to stop our server, and we'll need to install the Cloudinary package. So we'll just install Cloudinary. All right, and then inside of our folders, I'm going to create a utils directory. This is something, if you've watched any of my videos, you've probably seen me do before. And then we'll create a cloudinary.js file. And we're going to import the v2 as Cloudinary. And we're going to grab that from Cloudinary. And then we'll do a Cloudinary config. So we'll cloudinary.config. And we're going to need to pass in here the cloud name. This is going to be something. Then we'll do the API key. This is going to be something. We'll get these credentials in a second. Then we'll get the API secret, which is going to be something as well. All right, so we saved that. Now let's actually go over to Cloudinary. So let me show you what I have. Inside of my media library, I've got a folder for compressed, which is the podcast, compressed FM. And then I've got inside of that a demo folder, which is what I'm going to use. So I have the base image here. This is the image that we're going to overlay the face, the title, and the name on top of. So I've got this, and notice that it has a name of social cover base demo. And then I have a picture of me. Why not? So we're going to use just that image of me as the default guest image for now. All right, so if you haven't signed up, you can do all this stuff for free. So sign up for a free account in Cloudinary. You can put these things inside of a folder if you want to. They don't have to. You could actually put them directly inside of your media library if you want. But I am using inside of Cloud or Compressed. I've got a folder called Demo. Now, the other thing we're going to need is API keys. Mentioned that. So we are going to go to Security under Settings, and now we'll generate the API keys. So if you scroll down and you don't have an API key, you can generate a new pair. And what you'll need to make sure you get is the API key and the API key or API secret. So you'll need both of those. So make sure to copy those here in a second. Now, the other thing you'll need is your cloud name. So mine is just James Q Quick. You can find this under your account and Cloudinary cloud name. So make sure you have those three things, and then we'll take this back to VS Code and add those environment variables. All right, I'm going to paste in a little snippet here because I hate typing out environment variable names. I've just updated these to use process.env and then those three credentials. And then now we're going to need to put these inside of a .env file. So we'll go to .env, and now we need to add those three properties. All right, so inside of my .env, I've got the Cloudinary cloud name, the API key, and API secret. Make sure to add your credentials, and then we'll pull those in and use them inside of our app. All right, so also inside of Cloudinary, let's go ahead, now that we have it all configured, we're going to create our generate guest cover URL function, which is going to be an async function. And then inside of here is where we're going to generate the URL for this actual image. Now, if you remember, the URL that gets generated for this is this really long URL, and this has transformations along inside of it. So it'll be a little hard to see, but the transformations go inside of the URL for the image and allow us to use that one base image, apply transformations in a URL, and magically generate these really cool images. So that's what we're going to do, is try to generate the URL for this image that also includes all the transformations that we're going to do. So this function is going to take in a few parameters. It's going to take in the title, the first name, the last name, and then the guest image URL. So remember, those are the three parameters that we're accepting or getting from the body of the incoming API request to this endpoint. All right, and then from here, we're going to say URL equals, we're going to grab our Cloudinary. We're going to call cloudinary.url. And now we need to tell it where the image is that we're using. So in my case, it's going to be inside of compressed. It's going to be inside of the demo folder. It's going to be named the social cover base demo. And we'll apply the transformations for now. Actually, we can go ahead and add these. So we can add in an object here and then have in transformation, which is going to be an array of transformations, which in this case, we have none. So then let's return the URL. So this is a URL just for the image itself. It's not going to add any transformations, but we're going to build up to that. So inside of our API endpoint, now we can call generate. Actually, we need to export that function first. So let's do a export and then generate guest cover URL. So this way the IntelliSense will pick it up. So generate guest cover URL. We'll pass in the first name, the last name, and the title. And we'll get back the URL. And then we will log that URL out so we could see it. We could also return this in the JSON response if we wanted to. All right. Actually, this title will go up here. Cool. So we're passing the title, first name, last name, and then we also want to pass the guest image URL. And let's just see if that works. So let's do an npm run dev. We'll let this get up and running. We can go back to our request page here and send this request and see what happens. Cool. So we actually got a URL. And this should be just the base URL for this image. So if we open this up, it should bring us our image, which it did not. So we'll need to double check that. We also, I think I forgot to await, although it actually showed me the URL, which is interesting. Let's try this again. And we need to mark this function as async. Export default async function. I always forget that stuff. Let's send the request again, see what happens. So I think we're getting the same URL, and we may have a typo in our URL because this is Covier is what I've got here. This should be cover. So obviously make sure whatever folder structure and name you're using for your images is correct. So let's send this request again. Let's, if I command click, this should open, and there's our base image. So again, nothing super fancy yet. We're just making sure we can get the image. Now we can start applying these transformations, which I think is exciting. So the first transformation that we will make is going to be for our title. So we'll take the title and we'll overlay it on top of the image. So let's create a function for our title. So let's do get title transformations. We'll have this be plural. We'll talk about that in a second to have a better fit. But let's just do a basic one here. So what we're going to do is just return an object. And inside of this object, it's going to have an overlay property. And this overlay, we're going to use font family of Montserrat for all of these. You can pick whatever font and font size you want. We'll do font size of 40. And this will get a little repetitive, but we'll do the first couple from scratch. So font weight is going to be 900, which is going to be heavy. We'll do the text here is going to be the title. And then we'll do text align of center. And then I already know these numbers, so you may have to play around if you're doing something slightly different, but I'm going to say the width is going to be 500. Say the color is going to be white, so we'll have FFF. We'll have the Y, we'll just have Y be 0, I think, for now. We'll update that in a second. The X will be -210, and this may need to be a string here. X is going to be -210. And then we'll say the crop is going to be fit. So this is not going to look super great just yet, but it will be better in a second. All right, so now we can go and get that title transformation. So we'll say title transformation equals get title transformations. And we should go ahead and actually use this as an array because we will update this in a second. So let's return an array of these objects. Even though there's only one for now, we will split that into a few in a second. So we'll say title transformations, and then we will spread out the title transformations inside of here, and then make sure that we pass in the title to here. All right, so let's run this, and then we'll do a request. We get a URL. Let's see what this looks like. This is probably going to look, actually, it looks okay. So not that big of a deal here. This is probably good enough. I've got some extra logic. Maybe I can talk that through at the end of how to make this like a little bit more responsive. But if we do something like add really cool podcast and it's really long, we may hit a scenario where it doesn't fit so well. Let's actually see. So notice this is actually, it works well. It's just moving it up. So we would want to counteract that with how many lines are in this or how long the string is by pushing it down a little bit. But for now, that'll actually work fairly well. And I can show you the logic at the end of this of how I split these things up and then calculated the y-axis to make it look a little bit better. Now, interesting thing, I don't know if you noticed this. Let's actually take a look. Let's change the text here by one letter. When I open this, notice it's going to take a second before the image shows up. But the cool thing is after that image is generated that first time with all those transformations, the second time it's going to open up and it's already going to be there. So Cloudinary is actually caching these images behind the scenes so that they're ready to go. So after we generate it this one time, it's going to be quick and fast and ready for us every time after that. All right, so now let's start to work on the actual image. So let's go back into our Cloudinary functionality. And let's now create a function to generate the image transformation. All right, so we'll create another function here. We'll call this const get guest image transformation. And in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of be dependent upon an image already being uploaded to Cloudinary, specifically in my case, inside of my compressed, inside of my demo, and then with the name of James-Quick. Now, what we'll do in a little bit is if their image doesn't already exist in Cloudinary, we'll actually upload it to Cloudinary. So that way you also have a list of their images right inside of Cloudinary that you can reference. And we're going to name these based on first name dash last name. So at first, when we do this, since we're not uploading the image, we'll have to make sure that we pass in James and Quick exactly as it matches here. So this is going to take in a parameter of guest image name. So this is going to be the name of the image already in Cloudinary. Again, James-Quick. And then we can do an implicit return in here. So implicit return for an object, you have to wrap in parentheses, and then you just open your object. So we'll say this overlay is going to be a string, and then it's going to be compressed slash demo slash, and then the guest image name. So remember, I'm inside of a demo folder, which is inside of compressed, and then the image name is going to be James-Quick. We'll set the width and height for this. So we'll set the height to 242, and then we'll set the width to that as well. We'll do positioning on here. So again, these are numbers that I've played around with and know. So I have the advantage of that. So as you're building something custom, you have to play around with these numbers to see what fits. But this is going to be Y at -50. This is going to be X at 65. And then we're going to set the gravity as east. This is basically going to set like the origin of the axis that the origin of the graph that it sits on to be the east side. So the right side of the image. We're going to say radius is going to be max. This is going to be full border radius to make it a circular image. We'll set the crop to be fill. And then we want to set the border color. So we're going to set the border to be I set the border in general, 4px solid, and then RGB FFF. So notice this is similar to what you would do in CSS, but this is the syntax for doing this inside of Cloudinary transformations, where you have the width or the thickness of the border, it's solid, and then it's going to be the color of FFF. Yeah, I think that's it. All right, cool. So that works. And then let's go ahead and grab that image transformation. So get, or just say image transformation equals get image transformation. And we're going to pass in here the guest name. So we can go ahead and get this from the first and last name. So we'll say that the guest name is going to be template literal string, first name, and we need to put that in brackets, dash, and then last name. So that should match the name of this image that's already in here, which is James-Quick. Again, if you don't already have one uploaded, you'll need to upload an image to Cloudinary to make sure you have that. So we have our image transformation, and now let's just add that to our overall transformation. So transformation. All right, so hopefully what we'll see now is if we run this request again, notice we're just kind of building these pieces up. Let's open this. Hopefully we'll see, well, it didn't work, so something's going wrong. But I was gonna say, hopefully we'll see the actual image uploaded. Now there's one thing I have questioned. In my demo, when I reference this compressed demo, in the source code, I actually did semicolons or colons instead of slashes. Let's actually see if that works for this. So let's do this request again. Let's also make sure that this matches James-Quick. Yep, that matches what we already have saved in Cloudinary. So it looks like yes. Let's do this. So it looks like this is actually generating. Notice that it took a second there. So this generated well, so that's perfect. So for the names of the file for overlay images, we're using colons instead of slashes. So we've got our title of the episode. We've got our guest image. Now we need the guest image name or the guest name. So the first and last name of the guest. So let's create one more function. This is going to be get guest name transformations. And this is going to take in first name and last name. And what we're going to do is do a transformation for each one of these. So this is actually going to return an array of transformations. And they're going to be more or less the same. One is going to be positioned above the other, and then one's going to be white while the other one is yellow to match the brand color of compressed FM. So let's go ahead and do this. So the first one is going to be overlay. We're actually going to copy several of these. Let's go ahead and copy these. So I'm going to copy these styles, and then we'll tweak them. So font family Montserrat, font size is 40. The text is first name. The font weight is 900. The text align is still center, and I think that's everything. And then we'll copy over, or actually I guess we could just type these, but we'll have crop of fit as well. We will do color. So the first one is going to be this gold color. So it's FAFF00. Then we'll have our coordinates. So Y is going to be 120. And then X is going to be 325. Now, the interesting thing to note here, after we set the gravity, the XY coordinates are going to be based on that gravity. So the gravity is really setting that origin, kind of that we mentioned earlier. And so the X and Y is going to be an offset from there. And then we'll set the width to 325. Okay, so we haven't done the last name yet, but let's just give this a shot. So we will say name transformations equals get guest name transformations, and we'll pass in first name and last name, even though we're not using the last name first or yet. Let's just see if this is working. So we're returning one text transformation in here for the first name. Let's go and do the request again. This is the one kind of tedious part about this is kind of going back and forward and seeing this stuff piece by piece. But the one thing we didn't do is actually add this to the total list of transformations, I believe. So let's go back down. We're not using the name transformation, so let's add that into the transformations array. And since that is actually returning, this is 2 of them, we need to spread those out. So it's an array, we need to spread those out into this final array that's going to be used in the transformations. Hopefully that will do it. So we'll send this again. We get our thing. It's generating. Fingers crossed. We have a name. There we go. James. Cool. That's working. Awesome. Now we'll do basically the same thing. So I will copy and paste this whole thing. So there's one transformation for first name. Let's do the second one for last name. We'll use the last name property. We're going to change the color to be FFF. So 6F, so that'll be the white color. And then let me make sure I get this height correctly. So this height for this one will be 170. So we're pushing this down by 50 pixels. We're already using both of those or the stuff that's in this array. So if we now send this request and wait for it, hopefully we get the entire thing. So we should have first and last name, we have guest image, and then we have the title of the episode. So that is working really well. Now, the one thing we can do is, let's say we haven't actually uploaded this guest image yet. We can actually do that ourselves. So we can upload the image to Cloudinary and then use that image inside of this final cover image that we generate. So let's go ahead and do that part. All right, so we'll create an additional function inside of Cloudinary. I'm going to minimize these. So this is all just kind of like configuring objects for us. So let's get rid of, or just hide these for now. And let's create another function. So this one will be upload guest profile pick if not exist. And I can't remember if I actually do the logic in here correctly of checking to see if it exists. I think we're just kind of like uploading it anyway. But I'm going to do a guest name and then guest image URL. So remember that guest name format is going to be first name dash last name. And cool. So we'll say the guest image name is going to be, I just misspoke actually. So the guest name is first and last name. And then we'll take that and we'll replace the space with a dash for the image name. And then now we can actually upload that thing. So we'll call await and then cloudinary.uploader.upload. And you can upload from a URL. So we can grab the guest image URL. Now, the way this works for us is we have someone fill out a form with their information, which includes a URL to their image, which is why I'm just kind of assuming we already have this URL. Cool. And then we'll say the public ID of this is going to be, we'll say this is compressed /demo/ and then the guest image name. All right. So the public ID, this is going to be the name of that image as it gets saved. The public ID of the one that we already have is James-Quick. Again, that first dash last name property. So that should, let's see. Oh, we need to make sure this is an async function. All right. And that ought to do it. So we can actually return the guest image name here. That way, like whatever name we gave it, we want to get the return value to actually be the name of the image that's inside of Cloudinary. All right. And then lastly, we want to actually grab that image name. So we can say const guest image name equals upload profile pic if not exists. For this, we're going to pass in. Well, so we're using this thing. We're creating this thing here. We actually want to get that from the guest image name. So to the guest image name, we're going to pass in first name and last name. So first name space last name. We'll get the guest image name and then we will pass that now to the image transformation. So we're making sure if the image doesn't already exist, we create that image for the user. We then reference the name of that image inside of the image transformation to overlay on top of our final cover image. Hopefully that makes sense. And I believe for the guest image name, I believe we need to pass two things. So we pass the guest name and then the guest image URL. Cool. So if we were to run this now, I think this will do the exact same thing. Missing required parameter or maybe not. So let's actually go and check that function. So this is probably inside of our upload guest profile pic if not exists. So let's double check that function. And actually, I don't think the error is in the function. It's in the information that we're sending to this function. So we actually need to pass this in to the initial request. And this initial request will get parsed at this name. So we'll add this in there. And then I've got a little shortcut on my computer for Z profile pic. Should paste the URL to my profile picture on Twitter. So that's just a little cheat that I have. So you can grab anyone's profile picture that you want to. So let's go ahead and try this. So I think that just did it and it probably hopefully would do the exact same thing, although it looks like we're getting a little bit of an issue there. So we have the guest image URL. We have that image. Let's go back to our Cloudinary pieces. Let's make sure that this guest image name is correct. So let's send that request again and let's log out that guest image name, James-Quick. It looks like it. Object promise. So I think we're forgetting an await somewhere. So when we call this function, we need to await that response. So we'll await for this response. Very common mistake on my part. So let's send the request again. Cool. So that's going to work just the same as it was, except for now it's actually uploading this image. So I kind of lied. We're not detecting whether or not the image already exists. We could add extra logic to that. So this is really just like upload guest profile pic, and then we can update the name to be upload guest profile pic, upload guest profile pic. So we're not checking to see if it already exists. We're just uploading it. But what this means is we can do something cool, like now use somebody else's image. So I told someone that I was going to use their image. So this is Dominus Kelvin on Twitter. He's currently looking for a role in developer advocacy. So if you're hiring a developer advocate, reach out to him and talk to him. So I told him I would use him as a demo. So I'm going to use his image address. So just click on his image and then copy image address. And I'm going to paste this in as the image URL. And then we'll add in names here, Dominus Kelvin, and then say, hire me for a DevRel job. So this should generate a brand new cover image. This is where I think this gets really cool for this make-believe stream, but also then upload his image to Cloudinary. So let's send this. It generated. Hopefully it comes through. Okay, it'll take a second and it'll show us this image right here. Cool. So brand new guest image. Here's the title. Again, like I've got some extra logic in the final code to position this a little bit better. Name is here. And if we come back into Cloudinary and refresh, I think with this button here, we should see that his picture is here. So now if we need to use this for any promo material, we have it as an asset. We don't have to go and get it from Twitter anymore. It's right there. Super, super cool that you can do all this stuff with JavaScript and an amazing platform like Cloudinary. So that's kind of the majority of the tutorial piece of this. Let me know if you have any questions or anything else you'd like to see relevant to this, but stick around if you want to see a more detailed view into how I set this up with the compressed FM site. So cool, that stuff works. Let me go back to compressed sanity. So this is where we store all of our information. And if you notice, we had this kind of automated where if I were to get rid of this URL and publish, it's going to automatically regenerate that URL. And the way that it happens is with webhooks. So I've got a webhook registered inside of Sanity. And this webhook says, basically it's a URL, an endpoint that Sanity will call when something changes. So I use ngrok to use a localhost 3000 port and forward that to a public URL that I then give with the API/Sanity callback to Sanity. Say I want to trigger this on any creation of a record or update of a record. And I want to do this only for data of type of episode. So for our episodes, if we go and update, create a record inside of here or update it, it will trigger this webhook and we make sure this is enabled. And so what that then does is it calls our API endpoint almost in the exact same way that you just looked at. And it does the same stuff that we just talked about. So inside of the compressed folder, you can see I've got a couple of test things. We haven't done this for all the episodes because this is newer, but we've got the social cover base. We've got some tests with Brad Garapi and Nicholas Burke and Colby Fayok. And then we've got mine. And so we've generated those images for those different streams. You can see the one for Colby if we open this up. Super, super cool. So that's there. And then the other thing we do is also automatically generate using Cloudinary waveform images. So we're not using these quite yet, but inside of here, this is the waveform for this image, which we can then use on the compressed site for the audio player. So if you look at the audio player, if you go into the detailed view, you see this waveform image. We can actually like generate the real waveform from Cloudinary and then put that inside of the player here. It's really cool that you can do all this stuff. So anyway, if you want to know how to do the waveform stuff, let me know and I can do a separate video on generating waveforms based on audio. Part of that, a little hint here, is that you upload the audio to Cloudinary. So here's the different audio pieces for the episodes. And then you can just tell it like, give me a waveform for that audio, which is really cool. All right, the last two things I think that I want to show you are once we get a URL for one of these images. So let's take the Colby one. Remember, we talked about all this stuff inside of here are transformations. Well, we can actually add more transformations to these. And this is where the power of Cloudinary really comes into play. So I'm going to show you, if we look in the console and make a request, let's go to the network tab and go to images. Will it actually show that as an image? It may not, because we're actually like kind of requesting a site. Anyway, we'll see this in a second. So let me save this. So as is, let me save this as an image, and I'm going to call this Colby 1, and I'm going to do the dangerous thing and show my desktop. Let me grab a Finder window. All right, so don't judge me based on all the information and stuff I have in my downloads folder. But Colby 1, a couple of pieces of information. It's a PNG file, and it is 305 kilobytes. Well, Cloudinary can actually help us do this much better. So one of the things that we can do is add another transformation inside of here. And we can do this by going right after the upload part and then putting something in between another set of slashes. And we can do a quality auto. So Q_auto. And what Cloudinary is going to do, it's going to look at this image. It's going to lower the quality as much as it can while maintaining the look of the image to make sure it still looks good. So it's going to find that sweet spot for us. So let's do that. This should be generating a new version of this image. So notice it took a second to generate. Now, if we refresh, that thing's already been cached and created. So let's save this image and we'll call this Colby 2. So now let's go back to our Finder and we'll see Colby 1 is 305 kilobytes, but Colby 2 is now 139 kilobytes. So just by adding this one little flag inside of this image, we've now cut the size of this image in half. Now, there's one other thing we can do is we can also pass a parameter of Q, or not Q, but F_auto, and we'll let this run. So F is format, and different browsers support different formats that could be more optimal than regular PNG files. So if we save this, we'll do Colby 3. We'll get another image, and it is now a WebP format, which is able to create images or represent images in a smaller way. So we've lowered the quality, and now we're converting it to a new format. Now we're down to 85 kilobytes with just adding a couple different things to this URL. How cool is that? Cloudinary can take care of overlays with text and images. It can also do quality checks for us on our images to lower the quality just enough to where it still looks really good, but the size is different. And then based on the browser that's requesting the image, make a decision on what type of format to send back. Anyway, I hope you think this stuff is really cool because I think it's really amazing. So go and give Cloudinary a try. We'll have a link in the description for you to try it out and sign up for a free account. Remember, it's free. Everything you can do for totally free. What else from this demo or other demos would you like to see? Would you like to see doing waveform images? Do you want to see this thing actually deployed? Do you want to know more about the setup that we have with the Compressed FM website and the podcast? Go check out the podcast. Let me know what questions you have and what else you'd like to see in the next video. Anyways, thanks for checking it out, and I'll catch you in the next one.